Hello and welcome to another edition of Reality Vomit, an extension of the Vomit series of podcasts. I'm your host, Mac Taylor, and today we are here to continue our discussion about The Amazing Race Season 1. I've actually had a lot more fun going back and doing this than I thought I would have. Like I've said previously in the last podcast, this is not a show I have kept up with. This isn't Big Brother or Survivor that I've, kind of kept a relationship with over these years. This is a show that my mother primarily watched, and I just kind of, saw bits and pieces here and there, but it wasn't something that I was like, oh, The Amazing Race is coming on, got to cancel my plans. But like I said, I watched last season, and I was curious, and this first season has been pretty good so far. Usually the first season of a show is a little weird. There's a little bit of a feeling out. But the cast in this is actually very well put together. Whoever does the casting for The Amazing Race did a great job with this group of people. So today we're going to be talking about episodes 3 and 4 and talk about the next 2 eliminations. Without further ado, let's jump right in to episode 3. So basically, they're still doing the thing where every 12 hours, like the 12 hours after you arrived at the pit stop, you set out to the next leg. And this is really odd because in the season that I just watched, they have them start out at the beginning of the day. I don't know if it's a 12-hour leaving period or not. I just know that they don't send people out at like 3 in the morning because things are closed. And so what happens here is they have to find La Grande Roue, which when they translate it is this the big Ferris wheel in France. You have to go there, get your clue, then head to another place. Well, the earliest people left was like the Pat and Brenda left at like 11:30 or something like that. So still, everything else was closed, but the Ferris wheel is open till 12:30. So the best you can do, being an early team, is just get the Ferris wheel task done. So it's weird. You have people that they rush out because they've waited for 12 hours. They're in a race, and it's like, oh well, now we can't do anything till 9 a.m. So we have 9 hours to kill. But Pat and Brenda, the Guidos, the lawyers, and Frank and Margarita make it to the Ferris wheel before it closes. So the old alliance, the top 3 that have been kind of in control so far, and Pat and Brenda, who got the fast forward last leg, make it before it closes. And the lawyers and Frank and Margarita, their alliance is kind of intact. They're kind of they don't like each other, but they're kind of working together. They're like a little bit working together. Whereas the Guidos are just outright done. Like, it's very clear where the Guidos stand. And so, basically, there's 2 places that have a pendulum. There's the Museum of Arts and Crafts and the Pantheon. But the Pantheon is the only one that has the cat they're looking for by the pendulum with the next clue. So if they go to the Museum of Arts and Crafts, they're going to become extremely behind. Because that's the thing about these early seasons of The Amazing Race. It's a big puzzle. And, you can have one small thing go wrong, and that will completely fuck up the entire leg for you. And why everyone else is kind of planning like, oh, we'll go find this or we'll go find that. We'll see where the Pantheon is so we can just run to that when we hit the Ferris wheel. Joe and Bill are like, well, we used to live here, so let's go walk down by our old house. Let's go get some tea. Like, they are literally just having a night in the town. They are just having a good old time. And everyone else is, like, frantically trying to figure this race out. So it's you have this weird dichotomy of people just really trying to get a foothold for the next day, and Joe and Bill are just having a lot of fun. So the frat bros, they decide that, okay, everyone's going to be even come 9 a.m. when they had to hit the Ferris wheel at the same time. So let's go get the fast forward because clearly I don't want to get caught up with these other teams in the middle, and then now we screw up one thing and we fall behind, which really, it does make a lot of sense. While it didn't, and it made sense for Pat and Brenda last time a little bit, did not make sense for the lawyers in the first episode. It makes sense that if you're going to be put basically at the start of the race again where everyone's in the same place, maybe going for the fast forward isn't a bad idea. It is still super early, but, you don't want to risk going home early. So I wasn't too opposed to them. But even the coffee shop does not open until like 10 a.m. So they put their sleeping bags in the front door and sleep in the streets of Paris for a night. It's just really weird seeing people just sleeping on the ground. And Dave and Margareta, in the last leg, apparently, because I did not see them in the tower, up in the Eiffel Tower looking for the flag. Apparently, they both went up there, did not see the flag with the clue in it, got the information, and then left. So they actually didn't send one person up to complete the task. So they were penalized. It was like 30 minutes. So they actually went from like 5th to 8th place to start out because they had this penalty. And that was not something that was shown in the last episode. But like I said, they really disappeared for most of episode 2. So I was like, why are we not seeing them? That makes sense, because they were like, oh, we're going to put it in the beginning. We're going to mention it in the 3rd episode. But I think maybe they should have shown it. Like them at the map being like, oh, hey, by the way, you're penalized for this. But they didn't. It's just a voiceover of Phil just kind of quickly going over it. I don't know. Maybe they didn't have any footage of it. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe they told them off camera about it. But either way, they were penalized for accidentally going past the roadblock. And things are still super tense with Lenny and Karen because Lenny really fucked up that last leg. And so there's a bit of animosity still between the dating couple. So basically, Paul and Amy, Dave and Margareta, Lenny and Karen, they're sleeping by the Ferris wheel. And it starts to rain. And so we get like cuts of like the frat bros and these 3 teenagers getting rained on. And then you see the Guidos in a coffee shop just having tea. And it's such a great representation of like there's people that really focus on the race, and the Guidos are so confident in their lead that they are just having a good time. Nancy and Emily then show up in the morning, and they're like, hey, did you guys sleep here? And they're like, yeah. They're like, why didn't you go to the hotel? And everyone's like, there was a hotel? So while everyone was getting rained on in the middle of the night and freezing to death, Nancy and Emily slept at a hotel and then just strolled over to this thing. And, it's still at the same level as everybody else. So all that was for nothing for them. And some teams did go out and find the Pantheon, but Pat and Brenda went out and found the Museum of Arts and Crafts. So they are waiting by the Museum of Arts and Crafts and are now going to fall behind because they're not at the right place. And then the lead teams of the original alliance, the lawyers, Frank and Marg, and the Guidos, are all waiting by the Pantheon. Everyone else is going to choose to go up the large flight of stairs and ring the bell because they're all, they're in the same boat, so they might as well do something a little quicker and not get tricked and fall behind. So the morning comes, and the frat bros go to the coffee shop, and they receive the fast forward. So they are going to skip all the bullshit, go straight to the finish, and not have to worry about all this junk. The pit stop is in the southern part of France, so it's like the hills of France, the rolling hillsides you kind of see in like old movies. A very beautiful looking place. So it's a little tense when the old alliance meets up at the Pantheon, because the other 2 teams don't like the Guidos at all. So it's a little just awkward silence waiting for this place to open. Pat and Brenda are the only ones that have gone to the Museum of Arts and Crafts or not the Notre Dame Tower. So they're the only team that is not on the right path to go to the finish right now. And remember, they started this leg first, but because of this long-ass wait, they are now in a very, very bad spot. On the frat bros, like, you know what, Paris ain't even so great. Like, this is like Soho. And that's such a New Yorker thing to do, is no matter where you are, you compare it in a negative way to New York. You're like, well, we have this in New York, or, oh, we have baguettes in New York, or, oh, we have French fries in New York. It's such a New York thing to do. Like, you have so much pride in New York that you could be in the greatest place in the world, and you're like, well, it's not New York. So the 3 teams at the Pantheon make an agreement that they will go in and get the clue in order that they got there. So it would be Frank and Margarita first, then the Lawyers and the Guidos. And during the confessional discussing it, Rob calls the Guidos Bert and Ernie. So you can tell everyone really dislikes the Guidos. Which, you know, which one's Bert and which one's Ernie? I think, personally, Bill is Bert, and the other one is Ernie. It's Bill and Joe. I think Joe is Ernie. But that's just me. Comment below. What do you think? Which one of the Guidos is Bert and which one is Ernie? Let me know in the comments. So basically, the other teams, when they go in, they just keep walking past the thing that they need to go to. And the Guidos see this and just go, okay, fuck it. And they walk straight up to what they need to go to, completely destroy the agreement, grab the clue, and head on. And the Lawyers are so beyond pissed about this, but, like, you guys didn't pay attention. Like, you walked right past the one thing you're in there for. The Guidos saw an opening and took it. They have very much stated in the past they're going to do what benefits them. And you gave them a prime opportunity. While it was it was definitely a dick move, I can't really blame them. Because especially when everyone right now is neck and neck, you know, their only saving grace was that the other teams had to go to the Ferris wheel first and then would choose to do the stairs. That's the only thing that saved them here. You need to, you know, bridge that gap again, because like most races where you just, you know, once the lead is taken, it's hard to bridge that gap again. You know, every so often in this one, it seems everyone's right back to square one, and there's a lot more room to fall in the ranks. So you need to get those seconds when you can get those seconds. So basically, the next task is to find a man in a blue suit by the Hotel de Ville. And the Guidos discussed it. They're playing a cutthroat game because, like I said, they need to do what they need to do for themselves. They did not enter this game to make friends. They entered this game to win $1 million. And this is kind of the conversations you'll see in early Survivor and early Big Brother. Are alliances respectable? Is it cheating? Is it, you know, how much money is worth your quote-unquote integrity and honesty? And what, you know, we'll see as in the evolution of every game. And like we just saw in the last season of The Amazing Race, you should focus on you. Because an alliance, while necessary, you know, is only going to benefit the team that wins the game. There are, there's a couple other teams that are not going to benefit in the end from this because they will lose. So, you know, they are necessary, though, because not so much in The Amazing Race as in Big Brother and Survivor, because those are more individual games based on votes and, you know, the player's game itself. The Amazing Race is more about your ability to do tasks and travel. But, it's still, this is still a semi-social game. Take what you can get when you can get it is basically what I'm getting at here. And the other teams that are at the Notre Dame stairs, they're doing well, and they're all staying together. They're like Paul and Amy, Nancy and Emily, Lenny and Karen, and Dave and Margaretta are like, let's just stick together. Let's not. And it's an odd choice, but they're basically just trying to stay neck and neck. So Pat and Brenda finally realize they're in the wrong place, get to the right place, and they're super behind, but really still positive. They're joking around like, man, how are we supposed to know there were two pendulums? That's a doozy. Oh, man, we feel real stupid right now, but we're still, we're going to fight it out. We're going to see if we can make it. And you really can appreciate that positivity, because if that was Paul and Amy, Paul would be trying to quit. Amy would be talking about, oh, we're done. This is it. Like, there's no way we're catching up. Good job, you idiot. Like, Lenny and Karen would have, broken up. It's nice to see a team just remain positive, even if things are really not going well. So in the walk to the Blue Man, the Guidos don't take a cab. They just walk over, and they end up falling a little bit to the back of the pack. They're like the second to last team to get to the man in the blue suit. So, because I think they walked past where it was because they weren't paying as close of attention. So the Guidos were very confident, having lived in France, but they did not. It kind of bit them in the ass there, being so confident in themselves. So basically, once you get to the man in the blue suit, you have to go down the sewer system and navigate it a couple blocks over. And I thought this was going to be like kind of difficult, like people would get lost. And it really didn't seem that was the case. It seemed very straightforward that people got in and got out, and that was it. It was just like, ooh, you're now in sewer. Like, that's it. Like, they tried to edit it together. Like, ooh, it's dark. It's scary. What's going to happen in here? Nothing happened in there. People just walked through shitty water, came up, and were fine. Like, it was a bit anticlimactic. Then once they finished that, they must take a train to a castle in the hillside. And the Guidos take this opportunity to like, oh, hey, the underdogs, as the bottom four teams call themselves. They're like, hey, we're gonna help you guys out with the French if you help us get our tickets through, and they do. And then as soon as the other teams are walking to the wrong train, and the Guidos just leave them. So it's another situation of, hey, we'll help you for a little bit, and then we're just gonna go. The Guidos deal benefits the Guidos, and I personally respect that. They're playing a cutthroat game, and they don't make any ends meet about it. But the other teams are pretty upset about that. And Dave and Margareta and Pat and Brenda missed the first train, so they are on the next train, so they are significantly behind the other teams. And it's going to be a bit of a doozy. Now, there is a trick to this leg of the race. The train goes from where they're at now to the castle, and if you go straight to one city, then take a cab over, it's the long way. But if you were to, like, 3/4 of the way through the train ride, get off in this town, and then take a cab from there, it saves you an hour and a half. And the Guidos knew that already, so they get that stop. And then Rob, the lawyers, they talk to a guy on the train who tells them about this shortcut. So they tell Frank and Margarita, and then they go, and so the three teams that have been from the OG Alliance are way ahead of the other teams because they all got off at the stop. And the other teams are like, should we do that? And they're like, no, let's just finish out the train ride. Well, it's a very much like, they'll do what they'll do. We're sticking together. And then the frat bros arrive number one. And, in the cab over, the lawyer's like, we told Frank and Margarita the Alliance is solid. And Frank and Margarita are like, they're just trying to use us for our skills. We're not going to continue this alliance. Thanks for the help, though. So, the thing that they're shitting on the Guidos for doing, they're also doing, they're just being more shady about it. And you'll find that in a lot of these early reality seasons, is people say, we're not going to be in an alliance, and then, like, we're not going to screw anybody over. We have honesty and integrity. And then they screw somebody over, and like, I didn't screw you over, we're playing a game. And it's like, oh, now we're playing a game? Now that it's not you that got screwed, you screwed someone else, now it's a game and it's fine? You see it all the time. Like, look at Big Brother 2 and we'll talk about Big Brother 2 in a later series of podcasts again. But in Big Brother 2, people shit all over Will for lying and deceiving, but he was very open about it. He's like, I'm a liar. I'm a deceiver. And Hardy and Nicole are like, we're going to play this game with honesty and integrity. And as long as Will goes home, then, I don't care if I lose. And then they proceeded to keep Will in the game and take out other targets strategically. And then when people were like, you guys were in an alliance, you guys screwed us over, they're like, no, we didn't. Look, this is a game, we're playing a game. And it's like, oh, now we're playing a game. That's exactly what Frank and Margarita and the lawyers are doing. They're trying to subtly screw each other over. But they're like, oh, the Guidos, yeah, they're who are very open about their all for us strategy. They're like, yeah, they're the bad people, and then they proceed to do the shitty thing and expect no one to say anything about it. It's very hypocritical. In a lot of early reality TV, you'll see a lot of contestants that are, because they come in thinking because they don't know the game. So they come in thinking they could play a certain way, then end up adapting to win, and then look like an asshole. Whereas if you come in a later season, you know what the game is, and you know how it's supposed to be played, there's less qualms about your strategy, therefore. So the underdogs are still, even though they're way behind, they're sticking to a pack. And Dave and Margaretta, they get off at the shortcut as well. I don't know they never said how they found out about it, but they get off the shortcut and leave Pat and Brenda on the second train. So they're managing to come ahead of everybody else. So Frank and Margarita arrive number 2, and the lawyers arrive number 3. Because you have to hike up the hillside to get to this pit stop. I forgot to mention that. But first, and the Guidos arrived number 4, and they're surprised. They thought they were number 3. They didn't know the frat bros had taken the fast forward and ended up in number 1. So still, without that fast forward, the top 3 teams really hasn't changed in the first 3 episodes. But the Guidos are just a little bit more behind now. Dave and Margaretta actually make it to 5th place because they took that shortcut. They beat not only Pat and Brenda, but the other teams that stayed on the train all the way through. That's how much time they saved by getting off at that stop. And had Pat and Brenda done that as well, maybe things would be a little bit different. Paul and Amy arrive in 6th, and then right behind them are Lenny and Karen at 7, and Nancy and Emily at 8th. And Pat and Brenda arrive 9th and are therefore eliminated. And they reflect on, we didn't want to go because this was our journey away from our families. And, we just wanted this adventure to never end. And I felt really bad for them. And also, like I said, had they been able to get off with Dave and Margaretta, it would be Nancy and Emily going home. And I believe Nancy and Emily finished, close to the end in the first leg. So, Nancy and Emily and Lenny and Karen have borderlined on death had someone not made a huge glaring mistake. They would have definitely been going home. And I loved Pat and Brenda. I was very sad to see them go. But also I do like Nate. I like most of these teams. There's only 2 teams I would like to see go, and that's Paul and Amy and Lenny and Karen. So, if those teams go, and I would kind of like to see the lawyers or Frank and Margarita get a little bit of a wake-up call and finish, close to last, or even get eliminated to kind of shake the top 3 up a little bit. So we're down to 8 teams now. We're down to 8 teams now as we head into episode number 4. So from there, they must find a man in a hat in Marseille. And then they must use that. They get a flag in their clue. And the flag looks, there's 3 flags that have basically the same design. It's Tunisia, Turkey, and Algeria. They have pretty much the same color scheme. There's a slight differences in each. So they have to kind of ask around and find out what the fuck this flag is. And Frank and Margarita, I put Marg in my notes because I don't want to spell out Margarita each time, so I might accidentally say Marg. So Frank and Margarita basically leave the lawyers immediately, because they play second. So they leave the lawyers in their dust, even though without the lawyers, they would have been in the back of the pack, behind even Dave and Margaretta. And the lawyers had scheduled a cab that night, and Frank and Margarita tried to take their cab. And then get mad at the lawyers because the lawyers don't want their cab driver to call off another cab. But it's like, look, You just left them, and now you're mad that they're not helping you out. And so, but the lawyers are like, look, we'll call you a cab only if you agree this alliance is in place. And it's like, guys, you're giving the Guidos so much shit for being cutthroat, but yet here you are literally trying to cut the other team's throat multiple times, and you're trading turns. Like, all right, you try to screw me, then I get mad, then I try to screw you, and you get mad. But still, fuck those guys, because they're the bad guys. It's like, but are they really? It's all about narrative. And right now, from the edit that obviously there's like 100 hours of footage we did not see from The Amazing Race Season 1. But from the edit that has been put in front of my face, that I have taken in, now I watch each episode twice. So from the time I've spent watching this, the Guidos aren't the villains. Frank and Margarita and the lawyers, more so the lawyers than anybody, are the actual villains. Whereas the Guidos, yeah, you can't trust them, but they never really say that you should trust them. So it's a very interesting dichotomy here. And they're in the cab like, we've been honest the whole time. And it's like, have you really, though? Because I don't think you have. And there's lots of talk about how cutthroat this game is going to become. And that is very true. Because in games like Survivor and Big Brother, you start out with at least in the modern seasons, you have like 16 to 20 people. So there's a lot more time in the beginning of the game to kind of weed out the people that either aren't playing as hard or like easy targets. You have a little bit of wiggle room in the beginning to have an easy kind of like, let's get these, very simple votes out of the way before things get crazy around either the merge or jury in those games respectively. But here, there's only 11 teams. So after the first 2 episodes, there's 9 teams. There's not a lot of wiggle room for failure, and with each time a team goes, it's that much more competition the next time. Because right now there's like in this episode, only 7 teams are going to be satisfied with how this leg turns out. 1 team is going home, so it's very stressful. While on top of that, having to make all these travel arrangements. So Margarita, the frat bros are talking about like, look, this is Algeria. And she's like, no, that we got to go to Tunisia. So the frat bros are lucky they were able to have this conversation and go to the right place. And some other teams arranged cabs as well, but Paul and Amy arranged a cab, but no cab was there. Someone took their cab. And the edit kind of makes it look like Nancy and Emily took it, but they said that they called for a cab the night before. But, Amy's doing her thing where she's cussing and like, we're fucked and all they should have got us a goddamn cab and blah, blah, blah. And Nancy is not, she does not handle the tension of the game. Because we'll see in these early seasons, a lot of people are not prepared because they have not watched, especially in season 1 of The Amazing Race. There's no other Amazing Race to watch. So they have not seen how cutthroat this game is actually going to be. And because of that, there's a lot of people that break down mentally because they didn't know it was going to be this stressful. They didn't know people were going to, fall apart this hard. And you can't blame them because they have no way of knowing that. There was no way to warn them because they are the beta test for how this show will go. And based on this season, they would get another season. Obviously now 32 seasons deep, people are more prepared for what The Amazing Race is, but these people aren't. And Nancy, she's in every single leg, she is like 30 paces behind Emily because she's older and it's hard for her to run. So, she's having a very hard time. Meanwhile, while Paul and Amy are bickering because Paul's like, look, you're stressed out every single day, and I hate seeing you stressed out, so let's just quit. I just want to quit. Like, Paul wants to quit every day, because he even says in this episode, like, I didn't even want to do this. This was her baby. She wanted to come on the show. I didn't want to come on the show, and she's just sad all the time. So it's like, because she's sad, let me get pissed and make her more stressed out. Like, they're such a bad couple. And Lenny and Karen are having trouble, and then we see Dave and Margareta, who are like the ideal couple. And like they stated in the episode, they've been together for 40 years. There's not a whole lot of things about each other that the other doesn't know. So they don't have these arguments because they've been through shit together for decades, longer than some of these other contestants have been alive. They've been together, not just alive, but with each other. And that really is working in The Amazing Race because they know when the other one needs a break, or they know what each other's breaking point is. They know how to handle each other, communicate with each other, and they're just being super cute. They're holding hands, they're kissing, they're just being super adorable. And it's like there's something about the old couple that has managed to stick it out for decades that is just so adorable, that they're still that much into each other after all that time. It's super cute. The frat bros have also closely aligned with Nancy and Emily, more so not because of an alliance of placements like the OG alliance was, but as we genuinely enjoy them. Nancy is like our mom, and Emily's like our little sister, and that's an organic bond. And alliances, that if you can make an alliance with people you genuinely like, that alliance will last much longer than like with the Guidos and the lawyers and Frank and Margarita, where it was just like, all right, we're the top 3 teams, let's work together. They don't like each other. So it's hard to work with people you don't like. And I know that sounds so simple, but in a lot of reality game shows, you don't necessarily see that click in people's minds. If you enjoy being around someone, you are less likely to just toss them aside, and they are less likely to screw you over because you actually enjoy each other. That is a more trustworthy, solid alliance. Alliances are built upon, these games are about relationships. You need to build genuine connections with people because that will make your alliance solid. And that is kind of what has happened here with the frat bros and mother-daughter. They have organically come together because they actually do enjoy each other. That is the key to a actually successful alliance. And so right now they're waiting at the for the boat. So all the teams, again, just like last episode, are now, but even less because there's no way to get even a stop ahead. There's no Ferris wheel stop. So everyone is now, at the same place, and the frat bros are pissed because they used their fast forward to get in first place, only to now be neck and neck with Nancy and Emily, who are last place, who are the last people to not be eliminated. So, we're back to essentially episode 1 where it's anyone's game. Anyone can take the lead. And Lenny and Karen are very dysfunctional. They're arguing all the time. They still have not mended fences from the second episode at the Eiffel Tower. And Lenny, and you could tell why, because just like in that challenge, Lenny is more concerned about taking in the sights and seeing the world. Karen is more concerned about playing this game and winning. And it's just like Paul and Amy. One person wants to win the game and the other person doesn't really care about the game, but you are one team. It wouldn't be like Big Brother where it's like, all right, well then Lenny can get evicted before me and it's fine. We win and lose together. So if your partner's head is not in the right place, you could lose. So I understand completely why Karen is upset, but she is a little condescending with some of the things she says. But again, Lenny has been pretty useless up to this point. So Bill, because he speaks French, arranges the tickets for everyone, gets like a group discount and everything like that. But the tickets are misnumbered, and he's trying to figure out what tickets go with whose, and like just trying to figure out how everything's going. And like Margarita's down his throat, and Amy's down his throat, and he's like, "Look, I didn't have to do this. Like, if you have a better way of doing it, tell me." And then it's just everyone arguing. Because in everyone's minds, the Guidos are the villains. Like, why are they doing this? They wouldn't, what's the catch? Like they really have become public enemy number one. And Bill is a little cocky, where he's like, everyone's just intimidated because I spoke French for 2 hours, and we're leading this game. We tell them what to do, and it's like, man, like we really are up in the air right now. Maybe you shouldn't be so confident because we still have a lot of race left to do. And they show a clip that just puts in a picture the narrative of this game, where all the teams are at a table together eating, and the Guidos are at a table by themselves eating, and everyone at the table is talking shit about the Guidos, specifically the lawyers, who are doing the same thing that the Guidos are doing, just not getting called out for it. And it just perfectly personifies how everyone in the game feels. If they could screw over the Guidos and get them out, they would do it. And the lawyers even say the Guidos aren't good sports. And it's like, well, and they had just said in a previous confessional, this is a game. We have to do what we have to win. And now you're saying, except for them, they should be better. Like, do you want them to be better people than you are? They even bring up like, well, when they came here, they said they wanted to prove that gays aren't sneaky. Well, what are they doing now? And it's like, well, maybe they thought they would do that, but they're playing their best interest, and it's kind of a low blow on them, So I'm not a huge fan of the lawyers, as you could tell. So right now it's a foot race. Once you get off the boat, everyone is fighting to get to a cab and to get to the next task, because right now, they couldn't do anything until they got off the boat. Now it's, I got to get in front of this team. I got to get in front of that team. I got to make sure I'm not last. Like, there's a lot of just, like, the Guidos are having their cab driver cut off Paul and Amy. It's whatever you can do to get just a little bit of a leeway, you're going to do. So basically, there's 2 different tasks you can do. You have a photo of a cafe, and you have to find that in the middle of this labyrinth-style crowded marketplace. Find this cafe and get a coffee and get your next clue. Or you get a 20-minute massage. So it's like you take the time, and you could mess up and not find this place, or you go to this easier-to-find place, but you're going to be there for a while. So it's, it's kind of like the photo thing. Do you want to go a distance, like take more time but have an easier task, or do you want shorter amount of time, but a harder task? And pretty much everybody goes for the coffee shop except for Paul and Amy, who decide to get the massage. And Nancy, this is hilarious. I don't know why this tickled me as much as it did, but Nancy and Emily get an army of teenage French boys to lead them to this coffee shop, because I guess the boys found Emily attractive. So there's literally like 9 of them, and so you see sweet little Nancy sprinting through the streets of southern France with an army of teenage French boys. They're like, "Come on, boys, let's go!" And it's like they have their own little army of French teenage boys. It's so funny to me. It just, the visual is hilarious. And it's pure chaos right now because there are teams sprinting everywhere. It's a very crowded place in France. So there's there's people bumping into people. Teams are like Dave and Margaret are like, just follow the frat boys because they seem to know where they're going. There's a lot of chaos. And at the massage, Amy is getting like a very delicate masseuse, and she's having a good time. And Paul is just getting like bent and like his neck turned every which way, and like there's no oil. It's like a dry rub massage. And he's having a terrible time, but like he kind of deserved it after all the shit he's talked. And once they complete those tasks, they get a lighter that has it says go to, basically has a picture of the Roman Colosseum. It's like, go to this place. And they have to use that clue to get to the next place. And you can either take a cab, which is more expensive, or a train that is less expensive, but it takes a lot longer on the train. Lenny and Karen and the lawyers are the only ones that take a train. And like while Nancy and Emily are saying goodbye to their army of French boys, the Guidos literally drive through it. So like they're like pushing the teenagers out of the way with their cab. And it was like this funny little moment where they're like, "Oh, thanks, boys, we appreciate it." And the Guidos just like, "Go, drive, run them over." As they say goodbye to their army of French boys. And meanwhile, Dave and Margareta did not have time to exchange their American money for dinar, which is the money where they're at. And, sorry, I've said French this entire podcast. Tunisian. They had an army of Tunisian boys. Not French boys, Tunisian boys. My apologies. I was confused the last episode. Anyone listening to this podcast, I realize I said French, but they're not there now. They're in Tunisia. Tunisian boys, an army of teenage Tunisians. So they don't have dinar, and none of the cab drivers want to take American money. And so like they even send them to a bank, but the bank's closed. And finally, a guy gives them dinar. This random guy in the street was like, "Look, I'll give you dinar, no problem, man." And they finally are able to get this cab. So they spent a lot of time. And the people on the two teams on the train, Lenny and Karen and the lawyers, have fallen behind. But Dave and Margareta are now behind because they've spent, the edit was only like 10 minutes. But I'm sure it was a couple of hours trying to haggle with these cab drivers that would not take American money. So because of that very unfortunate circumstance, they're in a bad spot. And they're super positive still, but they're like, this may be our last race. Let's enjoy it. So the final task is you must go into the Coliseum in the dark with a torch and find a sword in a pit, and then take that sword to the pit stop. And the torches are like, have so much kerosene, like they're dripping fire, and you're like, Jesus Christ, like, it's a little dangerous. Like Emily like lights the wall on fire by accident at one point. It's a bit much. And Emily is a bit lost, but ends up teaming up with Drew. Meanwhile, the Guidos are just zooming through. Like, the Guidos have zero problem. I believe Bill was doing the task. Bill got through very fast. So the Guidos end up in first place. They managed to jump from fourth to first. And the Frat Bros, with Nancy and Emily, come to the end. And so the Frat Bros finished in second. So even though they ended up dead even with teams twice, they went from first to second. So they're still doing very well. They're still in the front of the pack. Nancy and Emily went from 8th place on the last leg to 3rd place in this leg. That alliance with the Frat Bros is going to pay off for them. Frank and Margarita are in 4th place. Paul and Amy managed to jump to 5th place. The lawyers fell all the way from 3rd to 6th place. It's a big ego punch for the lawyers. And then finally, it's Lenny gets lost. Typical Lenny fashion. And only because Dave and Margareta had this mix-up with the taxi cabs, Lenny is able to make up some time. He takes forever, but he gets it, and then Dave is now in the back. So Lenny and Karen, due to a cab mistake, finish in 7th place, which means the cutest couple in the world, Dave and Margareta, are last and eliminated. And they are even so gracious in their elimination that they're like, hey, this competition is tough, and losing to these teams, that is no disgrace. I wish them the best of luck. They're great people. I'm sure we'll be in touch. And it's like that is the great sportsman way to end a game. Just like, hey, we did our best. Good luck, everyone. It's been great. And I didn't expect anything less from this couple, and they were super adorable, and I was so sad to see them go. Why couldn't it be Lenny and Karen? Why can't they go home? I don't like them. Lenny is so bad. That is twice now that they got lucky they got helped by the sisters, and then they got lucky that cab drivers in Tunisia hate American money. That is the only reason they're still in the race now. And Nancy and Emily got lucky that Matt and Anna were terrible in the first leg, and they got lucky the last leg that Pat and Brenda didn't take the shortcut and had to go to the second pendulum. So, there are two teams still in the race. More so talking about Lenny and Karen that I don't think are going to make it very far. I think in the next couple of eliminations we'll lose Lenny and Karen, and if things don't change, the lawyers could go, and I'm very excited. I would love to see, in a perfect world, I would love to see Lenny and Karen go, the lawyers go, and maybe Paul and Amy go. I would love the final 4 teams to be the people that finished in the 4, being the Guidos, the Frat Bros, Nancy and Emily, and Frank and Marguerite. I would love them to be the last teams left. And if things keep up, they very well could be. Nancy and Emily need to stay with the Frat Bros. They don't need to be in the Underdogs Alliance, because one of those teams is going to go home next. All right, guys, so that was episodes 3 and 4. Let me know in the comments, guys. Watch these episodes on your own time. It's on Amazon Prime. There's other places to find to watch these seasons. Let me know what your thoughts are. Who's your favorite team? What did you think of these episodes? I have had a blasty blast watching them, and I cannot wait for next time when we do episode 5 and 6. Guys, 2021 is going to be littered with podcasts and videos and reviews and shorts from me. It's going to be a very good year. We need a good year after last year, and I am very excited to have you guys with me on this journey. Until next time, I'm Mac Taylor. Stay safe and stay nerdy.